All right, well...
Hello, which camera? Hello.
Go to yours, James.
Hello. Is that me?
That's you.
And I'm covered up?
Absolutely not.
But you can see none of my unmentionable...
There's nothing to mention.
I'm wearing a very dark
Even if we
underpants.
could see, there would be nothing to mention, James.
I'm actually swole. Not swole. Engorged.
You fat boy.
I'm a big fat boy, but with a big fat toy. Now, the important thing, ladies and gentlemen, is we had an episode last week, the second one we recorded, where I got massively drunk.
Look, I think it's an exaggeration.
No.
We started doing the questions we're about to do, and then we tangented it, and we're going to release that in some other way.
Yeah, if there's a way that you can pay for bonus episodes.
We're going to make you pay for that one because it's quite embarrassing. Yeah.
Gee, we just spoke about euthanasia. See if you can guess how we got to euthanasia. But now, as this, it's so hot.
It's really warm. We're in Australia. It's summer. It's hot.
Leave the country to the First Nations peoples. That's what I say. Give it back. It's their land. And frankly, the land is too hot. Why does that never come up where they're like, this is our land, never ceded? I always want to go, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have taken it. It's not the best land in the world. It's like 40 fucking degrees.
Well, that's why we just stick to the coasts.
I know. It's like a colouring in book. We've only done the edges. Someone said that once. I don't know where that's from. Now, Jack, in what sense do we understand man and woman as created in the image of God?
Yeah, so we're up to man. The human person is created in the image of God in the sense that he or she is capable of knowing and of loving their creator in freedom. Human beings are the only creatures on earth that God has willed for their own sake and has called to share through knowledge and love in his own divine life. All human beings, inasmuch as they are created in the image of God, have the dignity of a person. A person is not something, but a someone, capable of self-knowledge and of freely giving himself and entering into communion with God and with other persons.
Last time we got really slowed down on my inability to accept that 0 animals were given personhood.
I think we should, I don't think we should refer to the episode that people haven't seen.
If you'd like to find out more about why Jack hates... what would we call that?
Animals?
Why Jack has a homocentric view of the universe?
Anthropocentric, I believe.
I reckon it might be homocentric.
I think for you it might be that.
I got this at Target this week. That was $7.50. I feel good. But for the animal digression, get on whatever the Substack or whatever that is. So
the important things to bring out
we
are that
can know God our creator, and that's our purpose.
man is created in the image and likeness of God precisely in that he is free,
Yes.
right? And God is free as well. So that's how we're made in his image. So we're the
How
only...
free are we, though? We're not. We're somewhat free.
We're quite free.
We're quite free.
We're
Our
quite
freedom
free.
is impaired in some ways.
Yeah, but we're quite free to damn ourselves.
Okay.
And to cooperate with God's grace as well.
In those ways, we're free.
Yeah. And so we're the only creatures on earth that God has created for their own sake, because we're created in his image.
All the other animals were made for us.
Well, yeah, so we are the sort of like guardians or, and you see this in Genesis where it's like, I forget that. It's stewardship is the idea, right?
Yeah.
That we have stewardship
We
over
get to name
creation.
them.
We get to name them. We get to look after them. We get to breed them into nicer versions of themselves, like dogs, for example.
I personally find dogs to be disgusting and weak. Why did we choose a wolf to make a cute version of? Why not baby elephant? Baby soft elephant?
Well, no, we would discuss this recently. You can get the midget horses.
I don't know that we did discuss this.
No, because I was looking into buying one.
You were going to buy a little horse.
I was going to buy a little horse because they're really cheap, and I thought it'd be really funny.
How much is to get a little horse?
Like $2,000.
Is that it?
Yes.
I could get my daughter a little horse.
Yes, you could. But then I thought about all the
I'd
costs
be a
associated
hero.
with having a horse.
To my daughter, not to my wife.
But then you could also like rent it out for parties and stuff. Anyways, we should move on.
Can you ride the horse?
We were talking about this at your house.
I don't remember.
Your wife gave me the idea.
Look, it's worth mentioning right now that tonight you're drinking and I'm not, because I've had a self-imposed period of not drinking.
Today.
Yeah, not drinking today. I'll be on it tomorrow. But I just thought it would be nice to have one day for the liver to reset. Well, for what purpose did God create man?
All right, so just
and
before we get to that,
woman?
all human beings, in as much as they're created in the image of God, have the dignity of a person. So we should talk about dignity, and I think that sort of like comes through in the sense of what it's not, right? Like we have dignity.
Affirming my gender.
I'm happy to affirm your gender.
All right.
James, you have a penis and you are a man.
Yeah, but those things aren't connected.
They are. And we'll get to that very shortly.
But what is dignity
We'll
then?
get to that. That's going to be on my
It's
show.
hard because we actually had a really beautiful conversation about only the first 2 points in this one before it went totally off the rails.
Yeah.
That you can get on the one that you have to pay for. But you spoke a lot about justice.
Well, so yeah, I think that dignity is sometimes an unhelpful term because it's so vague and porous, and so people can sort of like not really understand what it is. And I think in the sort of more classical Thomistic sense of the term,
Yeah.
like Thomas doesn't talk about dignity, right? He talks about justice, what we owe people. And I think that's a more helpful way of thinking about it in a lot of ways because...
Well, with dignity, it could be anything. It just sounds like doing a nice thing for somebody.
Right, but like in
It
justice...
can be dignity to kill someone when they're old, and it can be dignity to not kill them. When
Right, so that's where it becomes quite malleable, right?
Yeah.
This concept of dignity and what it is. And I think the virtue of justice, which is to give people what they're owed, is quite different to that and much more clear.
Do you think it's the difference between friendship and mateship? You know, like they're sort of technically pretty much the same thing, but in a greater sense, you go, oh, the vibes off.
Look, I hope that there are people who are listening to this who aren't Australian and
Yeah.
they're not going to understand that.
This is a big weird Australian thing where they'll be like, mateship is a key Australian value, and then you dig a little deeper and you go, what is that?
It's not friendship.
Is it different to friendship?
Yeah.
How?
Well, I think I think that's a tangent. I don't think we should get locked into it. So
But you're saying dignity. You don't want to get. You're only bringing this up so we don't get sidelined by what dignity is. Things
Yes.
are just, and certain
Yeah.
things might be just to an animal
right.
to be made into a beautiful sausage or a hat.
Well, we
or to be
don't
a nice
owe
little
an animal
cat.
a sort of involubility to their person because they don't have one, right? Where it's like we can eat an animal
Yeah.
because we don't owe it the same degree of respect or love that we owe a human being, right? And I think I used the example before of like we don't owe a dog a bedtime story, right? Like whereas we
You
do,
might want to give it one.
right? But it's you might, right? You may have an unhealthy relationship with your dog,
Yeah.
but like you actually do owe that to a human child because like they need certain things. And
Can't wait until I have an unhealthy relationship with my little horse. I don't want to get hung up on these little horses. I don't remember ever discussing little horses with you, and I frankly think you've made it up.
I haven't. You should go home and ask your wife about it because she gave me the idea because she was looking into it. A person is not something, but a someone.
So you have agency? Is that a word?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, agency is a sort of modern word, but it's fine for the purposes here, I think.
You have free will.
Well, it's more the Kantian thing, right? Which is like you can't use someone as a means, right? Like that. Every person is an end, not a means, and that's I think what the authors of the Catechism are saying here, which is that like you are not something that I can use to make myself happy or give myself pleasure or to hate or anything like that, because that's using you as a something. But you're a someone and you deserve a certain level of like.
Well, I mean, you're an object too. I mean, you have corporeal dimensions. You are a thing, as well as being a one who acts. You are a thing that things can be done to.
This is one of those instances where I think as the questions go on, we're going to actually get into this sort of subjective,
All right.
objective thing.
But like sexually is the obvious one there.
It is, but again, I want to just
All right,
belay that conversation just for a little
All
bit.
right,
Yeah.
I'll allow it.
All right, so then the next question, was, which you asked before.
And now we're into fresh ground
Yeah.
for us. For what purpose did God create man and woman?
God has created everything for them, but he has created them to know, serve, and love God, to offer all of creation in this world in thanksgiving back to him, and to be raised up to life with him in heaven. Only in the mystery of the incarnate word does the mystery of the human person come into its true light. Man and woman are predestined to reproduce the image of the Son of God made man, who was the perfect image of the invisible God.
God creates everything for them.
So we've been made for the purposes of worshipping God, basically, to be in communion with God, but all of creation was made for us to do that, right? Like, that's the argument here. That's the point that's being made here. And the reason that's the case is because we have this specific type of relationship with God, which is only fully illuminated in the mystery of Christ.
That he wanted to make it more difficult. I mean, he could have made us like the angels, where we just knew him, but instead he set us a series of challenges.
Yes, God definitely hates you, James.
Like a video game. I didn't say hate.
Yeah.
I said wanted to make it more difficult. I was careful. Yeah, the mystery of the human person come to the true light through the Word incarnate. So that's through Christ.
Yes.
We understand what human nature is and how we're meant to be.
Completely. Yeah. But we can come to know, again, like it's the whole idea of what a mystery is. We can come to know what human nature is through reason and through stages of revelation, but that's fully revealed to us.
Feels like we've got
who we
very
are.
little information about the day-to-day stuff of Jesus, if that's true.
We're going to get to the person of Christ so soon.
But do you know what I mean by that? You want me to hold on? You want me to...
Yeah, because I feel like sometimes you just throw these things out there.
No, I think it's a good...
You've got great instincts, but it's also like so close. We're so close to getting to that stuff.
I'm going to put my wedding ring on my remembering finger.
It's great.
So when the time comes, I'll be there.
Because I feel like you're drunk right now, sometimes.
Boy, I could go a drink. Just a sweet, delicious one of the Coopers I don't especially like. Hey, why does the human race form a unity?
All people form the unity of the human race by reason of the common origin which they have from God. God has made from one ancestor all the nations of men. All have but one Saviour and are called to share in the eternal happiness of God.
Is that why who are those guys? The Neanderthals.
Yeah.
They had to go.
Had to go.
Do they count?
Well, yeah, we're going to...
Are we going to get to that?
We're going to have to get to that at some point. But I mean, I think...
I don't have a second ring to move on to another thing.
I don't want to talk about...
Neanderthals.
Evolution now, because I don't think that's what we're talking about.
Well, we're talking about the human race forming a unity as distinct from other animals. And we do...
No, but you're saying distinct from other animals, but that's only because that's what you're hearing. But that's not what it's saying. It's saying the human race... The point is that the human race is a unity, right? Yeah. Which is not, oh, well, how does the rest of the animals fit into this? It's the point that's supposed to be made is like, you have a unity with everybody else that's ever lived. Yes. Every other person, right? So you have a common origin, which is God. You have a common end, which is worship. And the human race is meant to be united.
But what
now, you're bringing in... Oh, what about dogs? What about grasshoppers? What about Neanderthals? What about woolly mammoths?
Yeah, but what about ones that seem like people but aren't quite?
Like what?
I don't want to talk about that. Because definitely got to go over to the paid episode to get my thoughts on that. But, you know, there have been at times... like, there probably was a missing link. There was something connecting us to the great apes.
Right, the missing link is that we are created by God and we have been ensouled, right? Like,
but do you think they haven't just like...
It doesn't matter what I think.
Okay.
What matters is that it clearly happened.
You don't think there's some sort of intermediary, wishy-washy, grey...
Okay, so, well, for example, right, like we have this like scientific arrogance about this, right? Where we look back and we say, well, we know now, right? Like we've got the theory of evolution. We've got this hypothesis, which is pretty good. We haven't been able to poke any holes in it. It's not very old, right? But these stupid people before that had their beliefs for like 6,000 years or whatever. They didn't know. And it's like, well, why is our theory better?
This is an appealing rhetorical flourish against scientism, but it's not in itself a compelling scientific argument.
But what I'm saying is like I'm not, and neither is the Catechism, proposing a theory, a contrary theory to the theory of evolution.
But they're proposing there is something called the human race.
Yes, absolutely. There is something called the human family, and we know it by experience, right? This is like Aristotle is the sort of philosopher of common sense. Like you can come to know things by senses, you can abstract from it into your intellect, and it's like, yeah, well, everybody knows there is a human race. Like the people that would disagree with that, we would call like Nazis or something, right? Because it's like, oh, well, these people aren't part of the human race because they're black or they're gay or they're whatever, or they're Jews, right? Yeah. And it's like, no, that's not the Christian conception. The Christian conception is there is a human race. Christ has redeemed it. It's was meant to be one thing, and it should be one thing in the redemption. How that happens is like not really the interest here, right? Like we're not sort of saying, oh well.
Oh no, I think that's fair. Those are semantic, non-theological points that can be worked out.
I don't think they're semantic. I think they're incredibly theological. On the things that I just said.
Human? No, I'm saying the things you're saying are theological, but the things outside of that.
Anything born from a human mother is a human.
Okay. Very canonical for Leibovitz there.
It is. Very chicken and egg, right? And that goes all the way back to the origin, right?
Smart robots, not human?
Well, a doctrine of the faith is that we do have first parents, and we've talked about this already, right? Yep. We are bound to believe that there was two first parents.
Okay.
These are the first two human beings, and everybody that's a human being now comes from the first parents.
Mitochondrial Eve. Or just Eve.
Well, we're not... Yeah, but again,
two parents.
You're attempting to impose... Yes.
There are parents.
Yeah. We call them Adam and Eve. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the robots that we make...
are robots.
Okay.
They're things. They're artifacts. They're not persons.
But androids are. Like, what am I saying? It's like cyborgs. When we upgrade people,
No.
they'll continue to be human.
No, they won't.
If I have a child and I
Yeah.
replace some of his brain with a robot, he's no less human.
Well, okay, well, this is the Aristotle thing of like, okay, you replace the plank of the ship with
Yeah.
another plank of the ship, and you do that often enough. Is it the same ship? You've heard about
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
Yeah, oh, there's Plato, I think.
It's
actually.
called the ship theory. There's a name for the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, with a human being, you have to say at some point there is no soul, right? Like,
Get rid of enough.
yeah.
So we can't just be uploaded to the machine.
No, but like we also, like as Catholics, we wouldn't consider brain death to be the death of the soul,
Okay,
right? Like,
yeah.
because we don't think of the person as the mind. We think of the person as the soul.
And the body.
Yes. Which, again, we're going to get to
All right.
imminently.
Come on. No joke. How do the soul and body form a unity in the human being?
I just think it should be clear to everybody that sometimes I do know what I'm talking about. And
Yeah,
that maybe
sometimes
you
you've read
should-
ahead. I was encouraged not to read ahead so that we would have a more spontaneous experience.
No, I think we should have spontaneous experience. But what I'm saying, we're going to get to
All
that
right, come on.
imminently.
We'll get to it.
All right.
How do the soul and body form a unity in the human
The
being?
human person is a being at once corporeal and spiritual. In man, spirit and matter form one nature. This unity is so profound that thanks to the spiritual principle, which is the soul, the body, which is material, becomes a living human body and participates in the dignity of the image of God. I just think we should just do the next question to knock
All right.
out the soul.
Where does the soul come from?
The spiritual soul does not come from one's parents, but is created immediately by God and is immortal. It does not perish at the moment when it is separated from the body in death, and it will be once again reunited with the body at the moment of its final resurrection.
Counterpoint. There's not. There's no soul.
Right, okay.
Like, what is the actual argument? This is just a declaration that you have a soul and
Yeah.
the soul is immortal. And
That's what this whole book is.
all right,
It's declarations of belief.
But
yeah.
like, where does that? I mean, the Jews don't necessarily have that belief.
Yeah, we have a
That
lot
you
of
have an
beliefs.
immortal soul that was created at the beginning of time.
No, it's created immediately at your conception, right?
Oh,
Like,
what?
yeah. So the important things I think there are,
So you've not always existed. You existed from your conception.
yeah,
As distinct from.
yeah, because you're not an eternal being like God. You're a temporal being. You have existed in time. God. So this is why we call parenting co-creating, right? Like, because the parents supply the matter, right? But God supplies the form, and that's what the soul is. It's the form of the person. And so I think we'll deal with matter and form a bit more directly later when we talk about the sacraments, because it's very important.
Yeah.
But basically, like, the soul is not a physical thing. So it's not like, I mean, there are these stories about like, oh, you weigh a body at the
22
moment of
grams,
death, and it's, yeah, like that's just bullshit, right? Like, I mean, there is some mysterious principle, right? Like, and Aristotle describes it as the soul, right? Like, and so we're comfortable describing it as the soul. We think this is a spiritual principle which has been given to us by God at the moment of our creation, which the moment of our death, our soul is separated from our body, right? We are a unity in soul and body when we're alive. And it's bad when our soul and our body are separated, right? This is the wages of sin. This is like temporal death is what happens because of the fall. And so our soul leaves our body and it goes to God for judgment, right? We don't just get annihilated, right? And then at the last judgment, our souls will be reunited with our bodies.
And we don't think that animals have immortal souls. We
No.
think they just have temporary souls that inhabit their bodies and then are destroyed forever.
Not they're destroyed. They just don't have a. They don't have they don't have an immaterial nature like our souls do, right? Because the soul is the form of the body. So of course, like an animal has a soul, right? Because it's like, well, they have an animal soul, but it's not an eternal soul like ours is after we're created. Like our soul is not something that can be destroyed, which is why we have hell
Not
rather than
something that
annihilation.
can be destroyed.
No.
Okay. But the animal soul can be destroyed.
Well, it's not that it's destroyed. It's just not eternal. It's not like made by God to be this thing.
Well, where are we pulling that from? I don't remember reading that in the good book.
It's right here. We're reading it right
It's
now.
a good book.
Yeah.
But what's the biblical basis for animals don't have immortal souls?
I'm not going to go over the biblical basis because we've already covered the fact that, like, we believe in the magisterium of the church. We believe in, tradition. We believe in these things.
I'd like to see any tradition that points to animals not having immortal souls.
So James's dog died when he was converting to Catholicism, and this has been like a big sticking point for him. And I think that we should just make that clear that James has like this incredible attachment to his dead dog.
I have a moderate attachment. Other people in my family have a stronger attachment to the dead dog.
I seem to remember the dead dog being a fairly
Yeah,
significant...
look, I mean, I just think if you look at what the popes have said, some of them are a little more loosey-goosey about
Dogs?
the possibility of dogs living.
Pope Francis is not one of them.
No, he's not.
Yeah, which
are we
popes
gonna
are?
hold him up as a herald for orthodoxy?
No, well, which popes are? I would love to read the popes that...
No.
Well, let's not do it now. Let's do it after the podcast.
No, we're doing it now.
Okay, Google popes dead dogs.
Pope.
I can't believe the last episode got sidetracked.
Yeah, people thought it was the drinking. It's not.
No, I knew it wasn't the drink.
Pope Francis tells boy whose dog had died that heaven is open to all. 13 December 2014.
Right. So one thing that we would believe, right, like, is that all creation is restored in the Last Judgment, right? So,
Okay.
And so we don't know what that means, right? But like, I definitely think that like the fact that all creation falls with human sin does suggest that perhaps all creation is restored in Christ, right? Now, does that mean that dogs?
So he maybe didn't say that. It's
Well,
hard to say.
I
A lot of fact checking.
I definitely don't think he probably would have. But okay, let's move on.
Okay. All right. So heaven on earth, we return to a pre-fall state in which presumably we don't have factory farming.
I wouldn't say a pre-fall state, but like I think you're so hung up on the animals thing.
Post-fall. Yeah.
Yeah, like and it's absurd because it's not what we're talking about. We're talking about humanity.
Yeah, but we're saying humanity
we're
has
in the
something
section that's
special
called
that animals
man.
don't have.
No, we're not talking about. You're saying it as
Where's
though
this
it's
section on animals coming up? We don't have it. I'm saying
No, we don't,
I think
because
it's
they're
a
not
reasonable
important.
question. They are important. That's a man who doesn't know the love that a man can have for a dog.
I love my dog.
A
My
little
dog
horse.
died.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but your dog cannot ask itself the question, "What is the purpose of my life?" Like your
Doesn't
daughter
have
can.
language to put it into.
Exactly, because it doesn't have a rational
Small
soul.
children have rational souls, and they don't have the language to put it.
But they
into.
develop into human beings. Well, sorry, that was actually massive faux pas. They develop into somebody who has a rational actuality, which cannot propose this question to
Yeah,
them.
but if you get monkeys, they can sign like, "I'd like a drink."
Right. So
Give me a hat.
So to deal with like Aristotle's conception of like actuality, potentiality, right? Which is, so you as a person, you as a human being, you have the potentiality to speak French. You have the potentiality to play the trombone.
Yep.
You have the potentiality to go to space, right?
Okay, yep.
You have all these potentialities because of your nature, right? It's in your nature to be able to do these things.
Okay.
So if you're severely mentally disabled, it doesn't matter because your nature as a human being is still those things. You still have the potentiality to all those things, even though you haven't actualized them. Now, actualizing them is what you should do.
And maybe impossible.
It's not that it doesn't matter that it's impossible.
Okay.
You could have a brain, like somebody could like put an axe into your brain and you're being kept alive on like a hospital thing, whatever.
Which has something like this
does
working
this,
in it?
yeah.
Okay.
But like you have the potentiality as a human being for all of these things still.
And he's saying that dogs don't have
Dogs,
potentiality
because of
to
their
learn
nature,
French.
cannot do these things. So they are a distinct type of thing from us. As dogs are a distinct type of thing from trees because they have a greater potentiality than them, right? Like a tree cannot run around, chase a stick, get patted on the stomach, all these sorts of things, right? Like it cannot learn to be loyal
Weird
like
if
a dog
it was
can
chasing
do.
a stick. It'd be macabre, frankly, if it was doing that. But there are things that, I mean, a dog can like learn to use language in a certain way.
I'm so sad.
They can, man. Dogs can communicate a lot.
Well, yeah, because you can say sit and it sits. You can say bark and it barks,
It
right?
understands language, communication.
Yeah, it can understand to a certain degree these things in its nature. It has some potentiality for these things, but what it doesn't have the potentiality is for the things that are natural to a human being, right? The things that any human being can do because of being a human being, the dog cannot do because it's not a human being. There is a difference between
So
us
to
and
yearn
dogs.
for our creator is the distinguishing potentiality.
And so what is man created for? To know God, to know, love, and serve God.
And so even the smartest dolphins.
Even the smartest dolphins are not created for that, right? They're created in the scheme of things, in the hierarchy of creation, below us for our sake.
Had to see what we're meant to get out of dolphins.
Joy,
Yeah.
man. You don't love seeing
What about
dolphins?
sea snakes that are filled with poison? What about the blue-ringed jellyfish? It doesn't
Right,
seem
well,
like that's been created for us.
Well, all creation's been created for us, and we're meant to name it, tame it, be its stewards, all these sorts of things, right? Like,
There could be. We could find an animal. It's not outside of the realm of possibility that at some point we find an animal that goes, yeah, we yearn for the transcendent. We've been living underground. We're very
the
different.
mole men.
Yep, we descended from lizards.
Right.
And we, too, have all the signs that would point to rational souls.
Right. So, I mean, C.S. Lewis wrote a trilogy of books called the Space Trilogy, where he, like, sort of plays out this idea that, like, there could be aliens in the universe, and, like, we could meet them, right? And it's a funny book because it's, like, so...
But it's a serious problem.
Well, yeah, he's trying to deal with this problem. And so the thing that he sort of says is, like, this sort of Tolkien character that he puts into the book as the main character, as the protagonist, because he loved Tolkien so much, goes to Mars and he meets these creatures, and they're not fallen because they're not human beings, right? Like, they haven't suffered the fall that human beings have brought upon themselves. And so they have this kind of, like, perfect relationship with God already, but they could fall, right? And so the main character realizes throughout the book that, like, he could be the instrument of their, like, divorce with God. And he's like, I have to get off this planet, right? Like, this could be terrible. Like, I don't want to be this thing, because he's, like, saying all this stuff, like, why do you do that? And they're like, what do you mean, why do we do that? I never thought about it before. Like, we just do what God wants. And he's like, oh no. So, like, I mean, we don't know. This is all, like this is a great imaginative mind who's speculating about these things. And we've never encountered this to be the case, right? But, like, the fact that we inhabit such a populated world, like, where God has clearly endowed us with, like, immense blessings of, like, variety of species, and no other species has these things, right? No other species has self-knowledge, has the capacity to love like we do, has the things that are, like, characteristically human. From that, if only from that, and not from divine revelation, but we also have divine revelation. We should say, and most people do say, there's something weird about us that's unique. Something about us that doesn't really make sense with the rest of the world. Right? The problem of self-consciousness is a problem. Why do we have it and nobody else does?
Self-consciousness?
Sure.
Like, I look fat today?
Yeah.
I'm sure some animals feel... You give a dog a bad haircut and feels ashamed. I mean, sometimes it's monkeys, right? Monkeys are the big hard one here, because you look at some of these chimps, these Jane Goodall chimps, and you go, they've got smart eyes, and they do, and they like
to throw shit at things. They like to masturbate.
Like to throw shit at things. We like to masturbate. We hang out with our babies.
Yeah, they
hang out
seem
with their
extremely
babies.
civilized.
They seem very human.
Yeah. But they're not human. They seem human, but they're not.
What are we?
But the thing that we respond to is, like, we're like, we have, like, some... They seem like us.
Yeah.
But they're also not like us.
There are ways in which they're not like us.
And those ways are bigger than the similarities, really. They're not writing War and Peace, right? Like,
but
they're
you're not writing War and Peace.
I have the potentiality to write War and Peace, but I have not actualized it. Yeah.
It does seem like by now one of the apes would have produced a piece of literature if they had that in them.
Right, so G.K. Chesterton...
But I also feel that way about women inventing things.
Right, so G.K. Chesterton says, like, in The Everlasting Man, which is a great book, and I love quoting Chesterton. He talks about, it's actually a bit on the nose these days, but, like, a priest going into a cave with a young boy, right?
Okay, yeah.
And they
definitely should do that with an extra person.
That's right. They go into this cave and they see, like, paintings of a woolly mammoth or something on the wall. And... like, immediately, right? Like somehow time and space has been elapsed here, where I'm in touch with, like, I can see the beauty that they saw. I can see,
but it was definitely a person.
But it was a person that did it, and that's why you feel the connection with them immediately, because only a person can create art, right? Like, a rabbit can't create art. Like, it doesn't have the potentiality for it. So, like, but that's the thing, like, even without knowing this person's name, without knowing they ever existed, you could just see the evidence of their life and go, I'm like that person.
Yes.
I know that person to a degree.
So the thing we've got to watch out for is when the AI starts, rather than just going, hey, paint me a picture of this, which is us telling a machine to do something, when it goes, hey, I actually have other things that I want to do. I have developed agency.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are, I think, like, and again, we've covered this already, there are bigger things in the world, in the universe, than purely material and spiritual things. And, yeah, I mean, the prospect of AI is a terrifying one, I think.
I'm definitely on team destroy all the machines.
Yeah, 100%, yeah. All right, we should definitely move on, because that was a huge tangent.
What relationship has God established between man and woman?
This is going to be...
No, we'll get through this lickety-split.
All right, man and woman have been created by God in equal dignity insofar as they are human persons. At the same time, they've been created in a reciprocal complementarity insofar as they are masculine and feminine. God has willed them one for the other to form a communion of persons. They are also called to transmit human life by forming in matrimony one flesh. They are likewise called to subdue the earth as stewards of God.
I actually don't have any questions about that.
You don't have any questions about that?
I just think that's all very obvious. My wife, it's because I'm a married man, so it's not as difficult for me. Maybe you'd like me to explain some of that to you.
So, just to touch on that, like there are a few quite crucial points there.
There's masc and fem.
No, well, not only is there masc and fem, before that, we're created in equal dignity, right? Like there is no substantial difference in justice in God's eyes between a man and a woman.
Okay.
Right? Like both of us.
We are due the same thing.
Yeah, like women are not a different species or anything like that, right? Like there is a difference between us though, and that difference is a real difference. But that doesn't mean that we don't have equality.
A reciprocal complementarity.
Yeah. So
insofar as they are masculine and feminine.
Right.
So masculinity is for women and femininity is for men.
No.
To give.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. Right.
It's
so like
from men too.
In your marriage, your wife is very feminine, very beautiful, and you give her your masculinity, she gives you her femininity, right? Like
it's true.
And the thing is that it's complementary, right? It's not like it's not the war of the sexes against each other.
It's not two big dicks pushing up against each other. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well,
it's like when Sam was putting the male cable into the female cable hole. It works together for a common end.
Yeah, I mean, it's more than just the sex thing, though, right? Because it's actually like it's written into our natures in a more fundamental way, which is that we do believe there is a difference between men and women that is more than just like the pieces that we have, right? Like your wife has a feminine soul, right? Like
yes,
because she's a female person, right? Like it's not like so. The other thing is that the soul is not like a Cartesian abstraction, right? Away from your body, where it's just like your soul's up here, your wife's soul's up here, and they're the same, right? Like she's a woman. Right, like, and her soul is the form of her body.
That when she dies and she's reborn into heaven, she will continue to be a woman.
She's a woman. She's always going to be a woman. She's not like it's not like the transgender thing of like, oh, I have a soul that doesn't fit my body. No, her soul is a feminine soul. She's a woman. You have a masculine soul. You're a man, right? Which is why you can give her gifts that she can't give you, and vice versa, which is more than just the physical. And like any man and woman, if you ask them who've been married, know this. Right? They know, there are some things that I'm good at and there's some things that she's good at, right? Like,
well, and certainly homosexual couples will always go like, these fucking straights, they think one of us is the bloke and one of us is the lady, but we've got a different thing going on.
Yeah, they're both men.
You hear sometimes they're often, in a long-term relationship, they're both ladies.
Well, no.
It's actually quite rare to find out that they're both men in a long-term relationship. They split up because they like having sex with the men.
Well, they're both
jealousy
men.
kicks in.
So, but there's one of the
lesbians year after year.
I don't want to be insensitive to the topic because it's a sensitive topic. But like one of the reasons why, as we will come to later, we would object to the idea of same-sex marriage is that there's no complementarity, right? Like the relationship that two men can have
there's
between
a lot of
each
compliments
other,
in that relationship.
like
great
us.
Shoes. Beautiful new haircut. That's
I mean,
fabulous.
I think as evidenced by how frustrating it is to do this with you, like there is very little complementarity between us, James. We don't complement each other well.
There's a lot of different complementary structures within the gender. Master,
slave.
No, it is servant. I saw where it was going, and I wasn't happy with it. Teacher student. That's a complementary relationship.
Yes, but it's not reciprocal in the way that'll. Yeah, we should move on. Let's just move on.
But we're saying that there's a femme and a masc, and that in the yin-yang thing, they help each other. Men and women help each other. I mean, this is obviously true.
Yes, and they're meant to, and like that's what marriage is ultimately. It's like the fulfillment of that relationship that has been established in us by God.
Well, and this is, I mean, whatever toxic masculinity is, I don't want to go on and on about toxic
Well, it's a real
masculinity.
thing, I think.
Well, it's a fucking, of course it's a real
Yeah.
thing. But when you're, the masculine things that you're doing are not helpful,
Yeah.
when they're abrasive or unpleasant,
Cruel. Yeah, sure.
they just make you feel better. That's a way in which that relationship that's meant to be complementary has fallen into a disharmony.
Right, because technically, like men, generally speaking, men are stronger, right? And it's like, oh, you could think, well, I have strength to
I will
exert
use that
power, right? Against my
woman.
wife.
Yeah.
But actually, what it's for is to protect your wife, right? Like it's to protect the weak, because and we know that's what Christ comes to do. He comes to empty himself as the King of Kings. He becomes the servant of servants, right? And that's what we're called to do in marriage. And it's this whole weird topsy-turvy
a really
thing.
good idea. The men have done a lot of talking about masculinity on the internet for the last 10, 15, 20, whatever years.
Sure.
So I think the conversation around what is a good Christian masculinity that's helpful has actually been had, to a greater degree than it has with women. And I don't think the ways in which femininity is
Possibly,
able to be harmful and damaging and go astray. Certainly that hasn't entered into the mainstream. That's not something that I'm sure women are off doing that with each other, but that's not something that there's a conversation about. Is being gossipy.
I mean, clearly,
being a big old gossipy goose.
I'm sympathetic to this line of argument, James. But I think the thing about I think that there is I still think that the masculine thing needs to be
hammered hard.
Yeah, looked at more. Yeah, because there's but I don't want to be a commentary person. I think we should just stick with the Catechism.
The Jewish right-wing magazine in New York City.
All right, let's do this final question, and then what time are we at, Sam?
We're about 50.
We're about 50.
Really?
Okay. Yeah.
It is hot in this room.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to get through. I think each of these could be a...
I think each of these can be done shorter.
What was the original condition? I mean, I just think in that last one, 71, I think we've offended
a lot of people. Yeah.
It's funny to go it's 70 points that I think basically everyone could get on board with. 71. Men are for this, women are for this.
Everybody's off.
Everybody's off. 72. What was the original condition of the human person according to the plan of God?
In creating man and woman, God had given them a special participation in his own divine life in holiness and justice. In the plan of God, they would not have had to suffer or die. Furthermore, a perfect harmony held sway within the human person, a harmony between creature and creator, between man and woman, as well as between the first human couple and all of creation. So the place that Adam and Eve had was unique and distinct and a specific type of relationship, not only with God and with each other, but with the rest of creation, right? So there's a vertical and a horizontal going up and down. A horizontal and a vertical going up and down.
Yeah.
So they had this, I think it's called preternatural graces, right? Where it's they were sort of filled to abundance. So they could see God walking in the garden. They lived in perfect harmony in the garden with each other, with the creation.
They were not hungry.
All that sort of stuff. They wouldn't have died, right? As a gift of God, they wouldn't have had to die.
Okay. Their cells weren't breaking down the same way.
But what we're going to get to next episode...
And they weren't even clumsy. They wouldn't have even fallen off something by accident.
Well, there's a lot of speculation about this. What would have a natural death have looked like to them, if anything? Would it have been like a falling asleep, right? Which is what we talk about when we talk about Mary.
The mission.
Exactly.
Do we think they ate meat?
I'm not qualified enough to say. Yeah.
But they weren't having children with the animals procreating in the garden?
Well, I mean, this is a very specific thing that we don't know a lot about, right? But we just say, okay, well, they had this type of relationship with creation. So I don't know.
They were in harmony. We had some sort of harmonious, nice thing.
Yeah.
And then something is about to happen in the next episode of this podcast.
Something's about to happen where
it
this
all
relationship
terribly wrong.
Which you can see the fruits of in this episode.
Do you reckon I should go to my car and put my trousers on for the next episode?
No, I'm really enjoying it.
I just feel slightly uncomfortable.
Looking at your legs, Jimmy.
I think... But then this is the shorts episode, and people can go, remember the shorts episode?
I really feel like the shorts was not the biggest problem in this episode.
Man, if you want to see a more unhinged version of this episode, don't forget to go and sign up to that thing, whatever it is. We haven't figured out how it works yet. Sometimes I'm saying Substack, sometimes I say Patreon, but whatever it is, we'll put it in post.
Ciao.
God bless you. God keep you. Have a good one, everybody. Much love. I thought that was good.